Welcome back to the Jungle Fever podcast, episode number 25 today. We've
Oh,
made it a quarter of a century of episodes. So if you've stuck with us all the way, we appreciate it. Unfortunately, it's going to be a minute before the Bengals put up 25 points, maybe. We'll see if they can do that in the near future. They failed to do that this week, 27 to 18. I think, honestly, there's a bit more positives to talk about this week than there have been the last 2 or 3 weeks. So we'll get into that. It was a tough game, but the Bengals do fall short. They dropped their fourth straight to fall to 2-4, and then they got to turn around on a short week and play Pittsburgh. Maybe we'll do a special edition show on Friday or something like that. We'll have to think about it and see. But they got to turn around quickly on Thursday night. We'll get you caught up on all of the injury updates. I know Trey Hendrickson is a questionable for this game. It's he did not have any major injury. Um, I think he would be back for the Bears game should he not play this week, but he is out. Oh, well, he did leave that game early, didn't play in the second half, which ended up really being a backbreaker for the Bengals as they just couldn't muster any sort of pressure on Jordan Love and that Packer offense in the second half. Amarius Mims, kind of the same boat, it seems like, from what Zach Taylor said in his early press conference earlier today. Kind of one of those stingers, which again, it was good. He was kind of worried about an ankle, lower body injury. It seems like he will be okay. Another one where maybe the turnaround is too quick, but if it's not going to be something that keeps Marius Mims out for a long period of time. Who is going to be out for an extended period of time is Mike Gesicki. It was just a weird injury. I don't really know what happened. I do remember seeing him come out kind of holding that chest pectoral area. The Bengals are calling it pectoral injury, and the quote from Zach Taylor was, quote, a while for Mike Gesicki. I'd expect him to be on IR here pretty soon if that is the case, which is unfortunate for a guy that really just hasn't got off the ground yet in 2025. Had a great year last year. Obviously came back for Burrow, didn't really even get the chance to get that connection going. So Mike Gesicki out for an extended period of time could provide some more opportunities for guys like Tanner Hudson, who had himself a pretty nice game, got that nice touchdown grab in the second half of that matchup. And that'll bring us into what we saw yesterday. That'll allow me to let Aiden do a little bit of talking here. I'll let him kind of jump in and talk about some of the good things we saw. Let's start out with the offensive side of the football. Obviously, very much a tale of two halves. The first half, just 64 yards of total offense for the Cincinnati Bengals. But the second half was very much a different story, and it's kind of what you're probably going to be looking to see offensively if the Bengals want to stay competitive.
yeah, absolutely. Just on that note, the Bengals' first half offense, 22 plays, 65 yards, an average of 3 yards a play, only four first downs. They were one of six on third downs. Flacco, 8 of 15 for 40 yards. The team, seven rushes for 25 yards. You knew that there was going to be some growing pains with Flacco under center. You
Mhm.
knew that, there was going to be some bumps in the road. I find it kind of interesting, though, that Zach Taylor after the game says, there are times, especially in that 2 minute offense, where I think there to end the second half, the Bengals sort of hit their stride a little bit. Was in that 2 minute look that they gave, was that there are times where the quarterback just kind of has to take over and start calling plays. And it seemed like in those moments, the game kind of moved a little bit better for the Bengals. I don't know. You could take that comment for how you will. But the second half was much better from this team. And I think a lot of it boils down to how good Flacco looked. I mean, he was decisive. He got the ball out quick. It was basically exactly what you thought it was going to be from Flacco. I don't think anybody was shocked by what he did. Jamar is Jamar. He is the best receiver in the league. It isn't close. 10 catches, 94 yards, an incredible
And he
touchdown
was
grab.
sick.
Yeah, I mean he's a difference maker. The problem is with this team, they got to figure out how to start a little quicker on offense. They need to get some production because ultimately I thought the defense played pretty solid in that first half of the game. And I think they were kind of wore down just with how often they were on the field in that first half.
I
Obviously,
think
the
that's
second half was
fair.
a little
Yeah.
bit of a different story. They got kind of bullied in that second half, and it felt a little bit like 2023 for that second half. But I think overall, given the whirlwind that was this week, you get Flacco in on Tuesday, you play on Sunday. It was just a lot that was going in the wrong direction against a team coming off a bye who's a really, really good potential Super Bowl contender in the Green Bay Packers. I think overall you're feeling all right heading into the
Yeah.
Steelers game, which is weird to say after your fourth loss in a row, but here we are.
Well, look, I mean, you have to take the positives where you could get them because, to be quite frank, there haven't been a whole lot of them the last 3 weeks, right? They've looked pretty lifeless in their last three losses, with the exception of, some fourth quarter garbage time plays in last week's win over or last week's loss to Detroit. And this week they were competitive, right? They were a couple plays away from maybe finding a way to sneak this game, right? And no, they didn't find a way to get it done, but there's encouraging signs in this game. We'll talk about the offense a little bit more here. Again, I agree with all that you said about Joe Flacco. What it reminded me of, and it's not a crazy comparison or anything. It's very apples to apples, but that drive at the start of the second half was very reminiscent to me of the drive that the Browns had on their opening drive of the season. Right, the Bengals went down and scored on that opening drive of the game with Burrow and Chase looked great, and then the Browns came back and had, what was it, a 18 play, 75 yard that took about 20 minutes off the clock. It was the exact same thing, right? That's the formula. I think that that's what the Bengals need to control. Look, the time of possession stats between the first and the second half were so split that it ended up being pretty even for the game, right? The time of possession ended up being just slightly in favor of the Packers, 32 minutes and 44 seconds as compared to 27 minutes, 16 seconds. In the first half, I think it was about 23-7 in terms of minutes for the Packers, right? With the exception of that late drive in the first half where they got into field goal range and McPherson almost hit what would have been a league record field goal. Um,
How long
you
was it?
know, it was 67 yards. I know that's a funny number these days. They got into a spot where they could not move the ball. They couldn't do anything offensively. It was flat out. It looked like high school stuff. And
The most
I
damning was after that red zone interception they got to start the game. I mean,
yeah,
that you feel like you got away with murder there to start the game because
end around. What was the three plays there? End around to Jamar, inside handoff to Samai, which this was the worst play of them all. Second down, and what was it, 12, right? They didn't go anywhere on that end around. They do an inside handoff to Samaj P. Ryan, and it goes for -1 yards. And now you're in third and 13, and you're expecting Joe Flacco for in his first pass as Bengal to try and pick up 13 yards on a Packers defense that, look, its weakness is the secondary, but they've got pass rushers out, you know, every orifice, right? Rashad Gary and Micah Parsons were coming after Joe most of the day, and I actually thought that was another positive. I thought Dalton Reisner was fantastic. Did not give up a single pressure, Dalton Reisner, in 44 pass blocking snaps. So very impressive performance from him. Um, Ted Karras, actually a little bit of a vintage game from him. I thought he was okay. 80 PFF grade from him. The other three, though, let's jump into the negatives because the other three, I'm going to give Mims the very, very slightest of passes because he was so hurt. And he got hurt even more coming in. Um, Jalen Rivers, six pressures allowed on 23 pass rushing snaps, 0.0 PFF grade. Is that good? I feel like it's not
no,
very good. And
no.
then less about the grades for this guy and more about the eye test, but Orlando Brown Jr. Um, a couple times in this game, I think on that long drive, the Bengals end up punching in on second down and goal. Lucas Van Ness just straight up beats him for
Yep.
speed.
I thought they were
And it
dead in the
was an
water on that play.
an ugly rep, right? And look, I talked about this last week on the show. The Orlando Brown Jr. is never an athleticism guy. It's always been about his form and the way that he works. It works because of how good that is. When that breaks down, you don't have the athleticism to bail you out. So when Lucas Van Ness just bends around the edge and uses that athleticism, he doesn't get off the line quick enough, it's over, right? And Flacco's not Burrow, and I don't know if Burrow gets out of that sack. So, it's just that was bad, right? That was bad, plain and simple. And then another guy we have to talk about in the negatives on offense, Andre Yosivas.
Yep.
Three bad drops. Two of them were completely inexcusable. Third one was a tough one, but still, you get two hands on the football, you got to make a play.
Yep.
And I mean, the second one was really bad. He probably scores or it gets close if he gets both hands on that one where he catches it. He's
Yep.
running over the field. He's going to get that edge and he's going to at least get first and goal, if not more. So again, some question marks about Josivas, especially the last couple weeks. He's struggled so far this year, hasn't had the same impact he's had over the last couple of seasons. So, We'll see what the Bengals opt to do at the receiver position. Obviously, now with Gesicki out, you'll see if they maybe change up some reps. Maybe Charlie Jones gets some reps. Maybe Jermaine Burton decides to get activated. Who knows?
Right.
But now
That
let's
that was
jump to
yeah.
yeah. Go
That was the
ahead.
question mark for me without obviously with Gesicki out. Because Gesicki essentially kind of served as your wide receiver three at times. He was kind of that slot guy. So who are they going to turn to now? Who are they going to lean on? It
Yep,
seemed like throughout that game, it was Tanner Hudson for a
played a
lot of
lot
it.
more.
So
Yeah.
we'll see how they go kind of here in the future. But
He
yeah,
played his
I agree with
first
you.
routes. I think he ran his first routes of the season in this game.
Mhm.
Maybe he had one or two in garbage time against like Minnesota or something like that. But he's there, right? He'll play a lot more now, especially with Kasicki out for an extended period of time. Let's jump over to the defense now. Again, there are some positives and some negatives. The easy positive to start with is DJ Turner. I
Yeah.
thought he had his best game, straight up his best game as a Bengal, plain and
Mhm.
simple. He now leads the league in pass breakups with 11 of them on the season. Um, he struggled mightily in week one, right, against Cleveland, with the exception of the interception that he had. He struggled in that game. And then he struggled a little bit on and off. But these last couple games, you're seeing flashes of a guy that could be a viable and solid cornerback for this team. He's finally starting to use his hips better. I noticed that on a couple of those pass breakups where he was sticking in the hip pocket of Romeo Dobbs and just not letting him get that traction, right? And the Packers want a flag. That's just good cornerback play, right? And he's shown those traits. Because look, flip it from Orlando Brown. DJ Turner has all the athleticism in the world. He's one of the most athletic guys on the team. But when you get that guy in the fundamentals, all of a sudden, I think you're going to have a corner here that's going to be a good Bengal for a very long time. So very encouraging signs from DJ Turner. Um, there were a couple other guys I want to talk about in a positive light because there are a lot of guys in this defense I want to talk about in a negative light. Um, I thought Joseph Osai had a pretty good game.
He did. I
He
think he
did
had one of his better, if not his best
yeah.
game. I
I
actually
thought he
think
did
that
a great
playoff
job
game
sealing
against
the
the
edge.
Chiefs was probably his best game.
Hmm.
But this is up there for one of his best games.
Yeah, he did a great job sealing the edge. Was good in the run game. I thought he did his job when Trey Hendrickson went down, right? He was one of the few guys that did when Trey Hendrickson went down. Um, and that kind of transitions us into and Geno Stone
I
had
was
a
just
had
gonna
a good
say,
pick.
yeah, with
Thought
Osai,
he did well
with
at
Osai, the
safety.
more and more
Go
he
ahead.
plays, it feels like more and more likely that he won't be a Bengal next year. I think a team's gonna take a shot at him. I think he's flashed enough to for a team to kind of, throw something at him and see what happens. We'll see how the year goes on
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, we'll have to see. Where do I start here? Because there are a few guys in particular that I really want to go into. Let's start with I just mentioned Geno Stone in a positive light. Because I did think he played a pretty good game at free safety. Jordan Battle is going to want all of the film from this game burnt. Um, this was a rough game for Jordan Battle. Maybe his worst game as a pro. Um, we'll start with the missed tackles because I think he had four of them. Just bad all around. Then on the 3rd and 9, the Bengals had a chance. Again, I say in this game, the Bengals, Geno Stone comes up, made a nice play, made a sack, got the Packers into 3rd and 9. If the Bengals had gotten an incompletion or maybe a run stop there, they would have got the ball back with about 2 minutes and 30 seconds left, and they were down six. They did the analytics play to go for two. We didn't even mention, just that was an interesting play. I thought, Zach, you can create whatever. I thought that was a smart decision
Oh,
there. You can
absolutely.
give him some sort of credit. But they could have got the ball back with very much a chance to win that football game, right? The Packers defense was reeling, right? Jamar Chase was doing his thing. T. Higgins was had gone in and out of the medical tent, but he was playing again. And then Jordan Battle loses Matthew Golden over the middle. And Matthew Golden's a great receiver. Give him credit. He had a couple big plays in that game. But, you know, that's your ball game right there, right? Because that got the Packers not only a first down, but in field goal range. And then they were able to kick the field goal that ended up being the decider. So, just a bad game for Jordan Battle. He just didn't really have it. And you can't have that. You can't have that. Now let's get into these linebackers because I want to start by saying Logan,
I don't think the Bengals know what
that's
they want to do at the
exactly what I
position.
was going to say.
I
I
don't
don't
think they
know.
know.
I don't think they know what the heck is going on at that position. Logan Wilson didn't play a single defensive snap at linebacker in the second half. What? Like, I I get that you're trying to have this youth movement. I don't have an issue with that. Um, what I do have an issue with is when you have a guy who you're paying a lot of money to, at least on the defensive side of the ball. And I don't like, look, I'm not saying Logan Wilson is where he was in 22 or, before he signed this deal. I, he's not like a husk, I would say. And
I think the Bengals think that. I mean,
well,
going
that's where I was going because clearly they opted for Barrett Carter and Demetrius Knight. I thought, I mean, again, these guys are young, right? They're really truly being thrown into the fire here. And I don't think either of them covered themselves in glory. I don't really blame either of them specifically, just because, again, they're young, right? And they're dealing with a lot. And this is a lot to be chucked in 6 weeks into your NFL career. But Al Golden's specialty is supposed to be linebackers, right? He was the linebackers coach on the Super Bowl team. He was the reason why Logan Wilson was as good as he was during that run. And Jermaine Pratt as well, now that he's gone, even still the same, right? So I just I don't understand the decision-making process. I don't know what needs to fix there. I don't know if you just have bad profiles in Barrett Carter and Demetrius Knight, or if you're doing something wrong coaching, or if maybe those guys just aren't very good. I don't really know. And again, go back to the thing with the time, right? They were on the field a lot in that game. They've been on the field a lot all season, right? I just, I, you know, that's kind of where
I don't
my
know.
head
I
is
don't know if
at.
I would go that far, to be honest with you, just because you're asking a sixth round rookie to play 100% of defensive snaps against
Yeah,
Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers. Listen, I hope he would be successful. Obviously, the Bengals think that he would be successful. Zach Taylor said post game that the decision to play Carter as much over Wilson is less about Wilson and more about Carter, which I think every coach is going to say in that situation. They're not going to throw their own guy under the bus. But at the end of the day, you're asking a sixth round rookie linebacker to contribute on this team for a considerable amount of time, which I think is just crazy. He played 61 snaps. He played
yeah,
every single defensive snap.
yeah.
I just
They also signed Oren
by the way.
Burks, right? And, not saying, again, I'm not saying, and look, clearly Barrett Carter's flashing practice, right? And that's great. I have no issue with that. I'm just wondering kind of where, like, and again, I don't want to tear these two guys down because they're both young, right? They're both, I hope, will both have long and very successful careers in Cincinnati. And I guess the positive to that is, yes, it's a straight up trial by fire, right? There's only one way up, that sort of thing. But I just wonder if it's costing you football games in the short term. So, and I don't disagree with anything you just said, to be clear. Like I think that's all very fair. And it is tough, right? For Carter, Carter was picked in the fourth round, Demetrius Knight was picked in the second round.
Or
It-
yeah,
It's
fourth round. Sorry, not sixth round.
it's the same, but it's the same thing. It's the same thing. It doesn't change it. They're you might as well just say day three pick.
Right.
It's all the
That's fine.
same, right? It doesn't, and that doesn't change the onus of what you're saying, and that's why I agree with it. So, it is what it is. I mean, they're gonna have to get better, right? They played some really good teams the last few weeks, right? With maybe no, I'm not gonna say that. And you have a Pittsburgh team right now. It's playing well offensively, but they have a chance to be a little bit more competitive maybe against the Steelers team. And then you play the Bears, who, I mean, it kind of depends on
Yeah.
a week-to-week
Denver.
basis with them. And then you play the worst team in football. So oh, is it the Jets first? Well, even
Jets,
better for
Denver.
them. Well, even better for them, right? Because then they get to play the worst team in football right next, and they get to play a quarterback in Justin Fields who looks lost right now. And who knows if they've even turned to Tyrod Taylor by then. So, they have a chance again, and I'm going to talk about this in the preview section. They have a chance to save their season over the next few weeks, but it's gonna take a full team effort. On the rest of the defense, I mean, nobody else really either stood out or was egregiously bad, in my opinion.
Miles Murphy for me is
Yeah,
just
yeah, that's a good point.
ghost. I mean, he
He
was a
played
ghost
two snaps.
out there. And especially with the Trey Hendrickson injury, it's just like you can't see the field
It's
either
looking more
way.
and more like a failure of a pick.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of, I think a lot of us kind of knew that going into the year, it was going to take something kind of special for us to kind of flip on him, but I mean, he played 33 snaps. That's 54% of the snaps on defense, and especially after
Absolutely.
when Trey went down, it's like
Yeah.
I
And
don't
there
know.
was just nothing over there, right?
Yeah,
And I don't know what you want him to do. He just has to be better, plain and
right.
simple. So yeah, Murphy was good. On the kicking, I don't really blame McPherson very much for either miss. A 58 yarder into the wind is tough. The 67 yarder he hit the first time, and then,
I was I was so excited, and then the
he made
timeout
it, and
happened.
then the
I was
Packers
like,
call a timeout, and then he was never making it the second time. But it is. I think and that's what we'll head into with the preview here is that it's something to build on, right? Especially
yeah.
offensively, you have a formula now, right? And you have again, it's another short week, but Joe Flacco now has another few days here where they'll practice today, they'll practice tomorrow, they'll be ready to go, and they'll have all this time to walk through, and the offense, fingers crossed, knock on wood, is still relatively healthy. You've got a chance to make something move against Pittsburgh defense that has been better the last few weeks for sure, but they started the year poorly. They gave up 30 something points to the Jets, right? There is clearly weakness within that defense. Real quick, we'll take a look around the rest of the AFC North. Baltimore, uh, I 1 and
Cooper Rush, man.
5.
Hey, you want to hear that Cooper Rush stat line?
Let's hear it.
Are
Let's
you
hear it.
curious about it? Yeah, let me pull it up
I
there.
am
I mean,
mildly
I'll
curious.
tell you right now, he ain't
It
Lamar.
ain't good. I know that much.
11 for 19 for 72 yards and a pick.
Nice.
And then
Nice.
that's
Well,
when Tyler Huntley came in.
yep, no, they did replace him with Huntley. They're 1 and 5. They have a bye next week. Lamar will probably be back after the bye, but they have to like win probably 9 of their next 10 games to
Uh-huh.
be 8 of their next 10. Maybe they could drop two more, and even then they'd be 9 and 7, right? I mean, they are in dire straits in Baltimore, and at what point? If Lamar comes back and they lose another couple of games, like, what point do you just call it a season with them? I mean, it is. And look, they had a murderer's row to start the year, right? They had a very tough schedule. I don't know if they would have won a couple of these games even with Lamar, but like, they've looked uncompetitive the last couple of weeks. And yeah, they fought a little bit more this week than they did against Houston last week, but like, it's rough. It's rough.
I don't think there's a team in the NFL that's more happy to be on a bye than the
Yeah.
Baltimore Ravens.
And look, we talked about it last couple weeks about how banged up they are, and yeah, they're banged up. Hopefully they'll probably cross their fingers they can get Roquan Smith back after the bye. They'll probably try and get a couple of those other bodies back along the defensive side. Zay Flower, 2 fumbles. You can't win very many football games with turnovers and threw a pick as well. So just bad mistakes, and they're 1 and 5, which is crazy. And then obviously the Steelers and Browns played against each other. Steelers win that one 23-9. The Browns haven't won a regular season. Obviously, they won that playoff game back in 2020. But they haven't beaten the Steelers in the regular season in Cleveland or in Pittsburgh since 2003, which is a ridiculous stat. Um,
Oh
that's
man.
that's almost 20, it's over 20 years, which is just quite, I mean, again, Cleveland. Um, Dylan Gabriel threw the ball 57 times in this game, or 58 times,
52.
uh, 52 times. I
Yep.
mean, whatever you call it, he threw the ball a
Well,
whole lot.
they
They were
ran the ball
down. They were
17 for 65. They averaged 4 yards a carry. Like they weren't really
Yeah, well, they were down a lot early.
right.
He completed 29 of the 52 passes. But Judkins led them with 36 yards on the ground. They was kind of like the Bengals. They just can't run the ball. Their offensive line is super banged up. It wasn't very good to begin with, and it's banged
Right.
up. Um, on the Pittsburgh side, they didn't really have to do all that much. They kicked a bunch of field goals. A couple of touchdowns. Hayward had one. DK had a long one, right?
Thought Rogers looked really good.
He did. He's the reason why Rodgers has succeeded is because the Pittsburgh Steelers haven't asked Aaron Rodgers to drag them to victory yet. And we haven't really seen that yet. They lost that game to Seattle by pressing the self-destruct button on special teams, and they haven't really been in a position to bother before or after that game. Right? They've just kind of taken care of everybody that's been put in front of them. And they had to, look at the Patriots game. Patriots have played really well since that game, but they had 5 turnovers in that matchup, right? In New England would want that one back. So, the Patriots, the all credit to Pittsburgh. They've done what they needed to do. They're 4-1,
I,
right? When you
I'm
look at
not
their,
I'm not as convinced with the Steelers
I'm
giving
not saying I'm
Cleveland
convinced. I'm just saying
forward.
I'm giving them credit for beating the
Right.
teams that are in front of them.
Yeah, going into that Cleveland game, they had a negative point differential at 3-1. And you
It's
look at
classic
the
Steeler football.
Yeah, you look at those wins, like you said, the New England game, they got 5 turnovers. They only won by 7. The Minnesota game, they tried to give away. They won by 3, and then obviously they get Cleveland. I think this isn't a team that you watch them play and you're blown away by it, in my opinion. I don't think you really are. I think this is a winnable football game on Thursday.
Yeah. And I mean, look, I'm looking at Pittsburgh's schedule. Obviously, they've played, some good teams, some not so good teams. They play us obviously here this week, and then they go into a stretch where we're going to learn a lot about the true kind of vibe of this football team. They host Green Bay, they host the Colts, who have been the story of the year so far, and then they go to LA to face the Chargers. Those are 3 good teams. 2 of those teams are going to be in direct competition with them for AFC seeding purposes. So, we're going to learn a lot about this team over the next month. That's what I'll say. They've got, they already had their bye, so they're kind of rolling all the way through here the rest of the way, and then they play us again off our bye after that Chargers game. So, we'll see, right? They could come out of that, let's say 7-2, right? You're thinking, okay, maybe this team is legit, right? But then they could also very easily come out of that 4-4 or 4-5 or 5-4, right? And you're like, oh, are we really convinced, right? And they do the Steeler thing that they do, where they just find a way to win 9 or 10 games, and they lose in the first round of playoffs because they've been doing that every year for the last kind of 15 years under Tomlin. So we'll talk a little bit more about this game. Right now, the line is at 5.5 points for Pittsburgh. I think what we have to start this discussion with is what Mike Tomlin said in his press conference a
Yeah,
little bit earlier today. Took some pretty pointed shots at Cleveland's front office for letting the Bengals trade for Joe Flacco. He said, I don't have the exact quote pulled up in front of me, but he said
I
something
do.
along the lines of, I don't know what, do you have it?
Yeah, I got it.
Go ahead. Give us
He
a read
said,
here.
quote, Andrew Barry must be a lot smarter than me or us because it doesn't make sense to me to trade a quarterback that you think enough of to make your opening day starter to a divisional opponent that's hurting in that area. But that's just my personal feelings.
Tomlin's funny, number one.
Hell yeah.
Number two, I mean, I just don't I can understand what Tomlin is saying, right? You have the Bengals were, Burrow goes down, Browning struggles mightily, right? The Browns aren't exactly in the business of propping up the Cincinnati Bengals, right? And we heard, right, the Bengals made a number of calls, right? If Flacco didn't happen, there would have been somebody else in the building for this week, whether it was Sam Howell per se or somebody along those lines. The Bengals made a number of calls to a number of different teams in terms of quarterbacks, right? I think that if you're Andrew Berry, right, and the Bengals call you saying, hey, what's the price on Joe Flacco? They've already benched him, right? They were rolling with Dylan Gabriel probably for the foreseeable future. You want to see what you've got in this third round rookie, even though you've got a lot of people baying for a certain former Colorado quarterback. But I think when you have it's kind of again, Tomlin said it. I'm not in Andrew Berry's shoes. I don't know what his thought process is. I don't know what he wants to kind of gain from this, right? He gained a what 50 pick gain in the turn of sixth into a fifth, basically. It wasn't a lot of compensation, but he felt like he could get something, right? And look, at the end of the day, if they went through the end of the season and Flacco just stuck around, he would have been, he would have got lost nothing. And now the Browns are paying, I think, 8 quarterbacks money right now, which is ridiculous. But
Man.
that's Cleveland for you. So
Yeah, I think that's I mean Andrew Barry, like he's like this is a guy who's probably going to be retiring at the end of the year, you think, right? It's
yeah.
if you can get anything for him, you can. But I can see where Tomlin's coming from. That's an AFC North rival. You don't want necessarily that to happen. I find it hilarious that Mike Tomlin is this shook about 40-year-old Joe Flacco. And I go back to the comment he made, what was it, last year or was it earlier this year, where that Indianapolis Colts game, he told his team, "Do not knock Anthony Richardson out of the game because Flacco was the backup." Obviously, Mike Tomlin has a level
Well,
of
you think about
respect for
all
Joe
the
Flacco.
Ravens
Yeah,
Steelers duels
yeah,
over the years where
like the boogeyman for him.
Flacco was out there, the Flacco versus Big Ben rivalry down the years
Yeah.
where you had some classic games, throughout the early late 2010s, where they were just battling for the division year after year. I think the game plan for this game for Cincinnati reads kind of similarly to what they did in the second half against Green Bay, at least offensively. Joe Flacco, I thought, did a really good job of finding his playmakers in this game, right? A lot of good things are going to happen when you get number one the ball. A lot of good things are going to happen when you get number five the ball, right? Keep doing that, right? Joe Flacco did a great job, I think, of finding both of those guys, particularly Jamar Chase. I think you have to continue. They have to try. And one of these weeks, is it ever going to click with the run game? I have no idea. I don't
I
know if
will
it's a
say that this
run.
was the most efficient I've seen Chase Brown. I think
It
he averaged
was.
like 5 yards a carry. I think it's not saying a whole lot, but it was the best we've seen from him this year. So maybe they're heading in the right direction.
It was. And I mean, it wasn't a complete wash, right? They
Yeah.
actually had some positive gains. So, maybe they could establish a run a little bit more against the interior of Pittsburgh's line that I think is okay, right? Obviously the edge rushers are great. TJ Watt's fantastic. Nick Herbig was a pick that was selected one selection after Charlie Jones for the Bengals, if that tells you anything about their draft strategy. Um, you know,
Alex
I
Highsmith,
think
please.
Sure, right, and Alex Highsmith as well. And then in the secondary for Pittsburgh, obviously, I don't know if Jalen Ramsey's going to be ready for this game. I don't think so. I think that means you're probably staring at backups dealing with some of these Bengals' best receivers. So, you're in business there. If you could try and find a way, I think Aiden's trying to discover right now if Ramsey is playing or not.
I'm certain
I don't believe he played against Cleveland. I might
he
be
did.
wrong, but I don't.
He did.
Oh, he did? That's cool. Again, I watched a ton
That's
of
why
Steelers.
I was a little confused. I was trying to look and see if there was
Well,
anything
I know he left that game against Minnesota.
right with the
But
hamstring, but
even so,
he played
even
well. He played well against Cleveland. He had 6 tackles. He had 2 sacks, and he had two
huh?
TFLs.
Yeah, they've
Because
been putting him up again. I've noticed that they've been putting him up closer to the line this year because again, the physical traits in terms of speed aren't quite there like they used to. But man, he's still physical, right? He's still laying the hammer just like he has throughout his whole career. So, I think but look, if you see Jamar Chase lined up one-on-one with Jalen Ramsey, I don't care. I don't care who you put in front of Jamar Chase. You could put even Pat Surtain struggles with Jamar Chase sometimes, and we saw that a couple weeks ago, and Jamar Chase had a terrible quarterback throwing to him. So it didn't really matter if he got open. And spoiler alert, he did a few times. So, I think you got to try and take advantage of your one-on-ones. I think that would be kind of where I was going with that. If you get some one-on-one opportunities, we didn't really see this a ton besides the fourth down ball, which was just F it, Jamar is down there somewhere, truly. And he
well,
went down and got it against a cornerback in Keyshawn Nixon, who's been really good, really nice revelation for the Packers this year. So, you know, find one. I think that would be the game plan.
yeah,
Find one, make
yeah.
it happen in that regard.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I think just kind of quickly because we don't have a ton of time, but
Hmm.
Pittsburgh just has game wreckers on defense. It's how do you kind of silence those guys? How do you manage those guys? You have to game plan around them. You have to game plan around TJ Watt. He's similar to that Miles Garrett role, where you have to figure out a way in order to kind of null him and take him out of the game. I think for Joe Flacco, it's just going to be getting the ball out of his hands quickly. And then it's how do you take advantage of some of these guys in the secondary? Obviously, Joey Porter Jr. and Jalen Ramsey are going to fight for that Jamar Chase assignment. That was something over the
Hmm.
offseason. There was a lot of noise about who gets to guard Jamar Chase. I would assume it's probably going to be Joey Porter Jr. So that's been a matchup that's given Jamar some fits. I think it's just because of how physical Joey Porter Jr. is. But then on the other end, it's Darius Slay. Does that scare you if you're T. Higgins? Not really. So I think that's an
I would like to see them get T a little bit more involved. I think
he
they
had a good
can.
game. He had a good game in
He
Green
did.
Bay,
He
and
did.
so and then on the other end, I think for Pittsburgh, it all starts on their ground game, and then it's the Aaron Rodgers' ability to work off the play action. They ran the ball pretty efficiently against a really good Cleveland defense. Jalen Warren was averaging 5 yards a carry, so that doesn't bode well for this Bengals defense. That looks a little bit different than the Cleveland defense, but you have to shut down the run. I think you make Rodgers one-dimensional, and I think you feel really good because outside of DK Metcalf the pass catchers, I don't think you feel threatened by
It's the
them a
tight
lot.
ends. The tight ends are
Exactly.
basically wide receiver two
They're
and three. You
matchup
got Jonnu
nightmares.
Smith. Yep.
Barrett Carter and Demetrius Knight. Here we go. You want to talk about trial by fire? They're going to be tested come Thursday night. So I think a good path to victory is just making Aaron Rodgers one dimensional, making him beat you, making him drop back and sling it 40 times, right?
Yeah.
Then I think you feel pretty good about it. But
I mean, the Packers had 153 rushing yards against the Bengals.
Mhm.
And a lot of that was in the first half, honestly. The Packers just threw the ball a lot better in the second half.
Mhm.
I think if you're going to win this game, you have to force Rodgers into making a couple of mistakes he hasn't made in a while.
Right.
You're going to need that turnover bug to come back, and the Bengals have to win the turnover battle, which they did actually against Green Bay.
Steelers had
Um,
it in the game.
yeah. But, they have to try and find a way to limit. I think you got to try and make this team one dimensional. Whether that is completely, selling out a little bit against the run. And we've seen Al Golden get a little bit more creative with some of these blitzes, and they've worked in a lot of cases. We saw it on that second down play where Geno Stone got that nice sack, right? They're getting creative. And I like that from Al Golden. I don't really blame Al Golden for a lot of the issues the defense has had so far this year. I think he's doing a pretty good job with what he's got in front of him. So, again, I think you got to try and force Rodgers to be one dimensional and force him to throw to guys that aren't named DK Metcalf,
You
right?
got to get him off his
Try and,
spot.
yeah,
You got to put pressure.
exactly. Got to get pressure on him. Force him to throw to Jonnu Smith underneath. Force him to check it down to Jalen Warren. Don't let the big play happen. I thought they did a pretty good job of that against the Packers. With the exception of the couple deep balls to Golden, one of which was off script. I thought they did a pretty good job of limiting the deep ball. So again, you got to try and find a way to kind of like they sort of did for a little bit against Green Bay, make it a rock fight, make it tough, keep the ball, possess the ball, keep it out of Rodgers' hands. Control the clock, control the time of possession. If they can establish a run game, they've got a little bit of a shot in this game. I think, they're going to be wearing the white helmets. They're going to look good. They lost that perfect record with it last year when they lost the Super Bowl champions, but we'll see if they can keep it going this year in those white helmets. It should be a great atmosphere, and in prime time. You hope a lot of Bengals fans show up. If I see a lot of terrible towels, which there will be, I hate it, but there will be. I'll be annoyed. But we'll see if they can get it done. It's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a rock fight. I have confidence. I have weird confidence going into this game. I can't lie.
Rip a score prediction.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to take the Bengals. I think it's going to be close. I think it'll be tight. I got Bengals 21, Steelers 17, and just an all-out rock fight.
Okay. I think for the first time this year, we're going to split. I think we've agreed on everything this year. I think I'm going to take Pittsburgh. I just think on the short week, um, a lot of things have to go right for the Bengals to win this game, and I just don't see all of them going right. In terms of score, I think I'm going to go 23-17. I think it's a low scoring game, but I think Pittsburgh will get it done. There might be some late shenanigans. Maybe Flacco pulls out a late fourth quarter vintage drive, and maybe the Bengals get the win. But I do think Pittsburgh wins, but I think it's close. And I think the Bengals have a real shot. I will say that much. I'm very, very much more confident this week than I have been over the last couple weeks. So that'll do it for this edition of the Jungle Fever podcast. We'll see what we do this week. We'll see how the game goes on Thursday. Maybe we'll have an emergency show Friday, depending on the results and how things go. But until then, we'll be out. Have a great rest of your week. We'll see you Thursday night. Have a good one.